Hey everyone, and thank you all for joining us here. I'm here with Sophia, and we are here for a very special edition of this podcast, of this show, and the gray stage continues. Hey Sophia, how are you?
Hello, how are you, Greg?
I'm doing very well. It's not bad. Today is September 26th. It is about 6:15 p.m., and we are live here on the Gray Stage YouTube channel. So I'm going to just briefly share this link here in case anybody wants to join us. Let me go ahead and make sure that we are live. Alright, let's see. It looks like we are live here. I just want to make sure we are, because I'm not seeing it on my own channel, but that's okay. That happens sometimes. Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, I don't see it either. It said that it went live 29 minutes ago, which is weird.
That is weird. Let's see. And it says it's starting. So let's see. Yeah, streamed live 30 minutes ago. What the heck? Alright, I'm gonna check this while we're looking at that. Let me know if you do see it go live. I'll tell you, YouTube, I've been having just strange issues like this. Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, I see 1 minute ago, streamed 30 minutes ago.
I don't know why it's saying 30 minutes ago. And on my side it just says
What
starting. Okay, starting. Huh. Pretty odd. At least it's green now. It was yellow, so that's... I think that other one might be throwing it off somehow. Because I have the scheduled one. Possibly.
Okay.
So that sucks. I might have to get rid of the scheduled one and then restart this. I'm gonna stop this stream. Okay. Alright, we are now starting the stream, the Gray Stage live stream on the Gray Stage YouTube channel. I am here with Sophia. Hope everybody can hear me, can see me. The date is September 26, 2019. And we're going to give this a few seconds here before we get going. But I do want to say hi to Sophia and thank you very much for bringing this to the table here. I think this is going to be an interesting topic that you've chosen. What made you want to choose this one while we get going here?
This has bugged me ever since it was brought to our attention. It just didn't sound like Camille, and it's written in first person and it goes to third person and first person again, and then come to find out that much of the information that is written in this journal was actually taken verbatim from several articles regarding the book. Oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the book now, right off the top of my head.
That was the one with the...
It was a marriage counseling book.
Marriage counseling book, okay.
And...
yeah, we'll definitely get that one. We'll find the... we'll get the name of that there. No worries there.
I'm still not seeing this coming up.
I see we have She-Wolf here and a few people here, 5 people watching right now on our YouTube live stream, so I want to definitely thank everybody there. If you're not seeing it, Sophia, you might need to refresh, but it looks like we are live. Everything looks good. And my cat is live here too. She wants to be a part of this. Okay, so let me just go ahead and share this, and then we'll get started here. But we're going to be talking about the handwriting analysis between possible handwriting samples by Kamel and the journal page. This might be a very controversial. Oh, I heard myself there. This might be a very controversial subject for some people. Go ahead.
It showed up on my other device, and
Okay.
so I'm just opening up the PowerPoint so that I can go over this with you.
Okay. I'm still on slide 1 here, and I'm just letting people know in the Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook group, letting them know that we are live. And also, tomorrow we will also be here live as well around this same time, and we will be continuing our discussion about the notepad, about murder versus a suicide, and anything else anybody wants to talk about. So I want to say hi to She-Wolf, to Paulette, and Paulette says she finally found y'all. Very good. Speaking of that, I'm going to go ahead and add this. So I want to make it as easy as possible for people to find. So I'm going to go ahead and do that too. And then we'll get rocking and rolling here. So let me know when you have the slideshow pulled up. And we'll go from there. Okay, excellent there. And let me just go ahead. Just going to change this. Paste that there. Okay, so we are on slide 1 here. Handwriting analysis between possible handwriting samples by Kamel and the journal page. Okay, moving on to slide number 2. Graphology. I have to be honest with you, until I saw this, I had no idea what this was. So this shows how little that I know about anything to do with the study of handwriting. Graphology is the study of handwriting, especially when regarded as an expression of the writer's character, personality, abilities, etc.
Graphology is extremely telling, and many job interviewers will use this technique. They train CEOs of companies, human resources. They even use it in the court of law too. They'll use it for all types of cases, whether it's fraud or civil cases. I mean, just all types. It's really, really huge in Canada. In fact, I've been listening to a lot of lectures with a gentleman who is based out of Canada, and he will travel to the UK, to Scotland, to Ireland. He's teaching everywhere, and he's really amazing. But I watched his lectures, but that's not who I used in regards to analyzing the journal pieces and her handwriting.
All right, we're looking at slide number 3 here. Journal page, print writing. Go ahead and do you want to, if you can see this, if you can read this out here for us.
Generally, people who print have put up barriers to keep the world from getting to know them. They do not easily express their inner feelings, or innermost feelings, People who print take longer to experience intimacy and tend to have a strong external protective mental shell that is often seen as confidence.
Confidence, right.
Sorry, I misspelled that one.
That's okay.
I apologize. Now it is estimated that over half of the men in the U.S. prefer to print than write in cursive. And as you notice with the example that I showed, the journal page they're using print writing. And you'll see that most of it is printed, and then you'll see some words and letters where they use a cursive mode or they kind of go into that cursive mode.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is literally called print writing.
And that's all I do. I can't remember the last time that I wrote in cursive. And really, it's like, because when you're writing, especially if you're trying to capture your thoughts or something, you're going to write fast. You know, if you're really trying to think it out, I don't know, at least for me, it's just more natural to just do print writing than to do cursive. So I generally don't agree with stats, but I think this one is, I would fall into that stat.
And that's why in our other phone call that we did, I asked the men that were on the call if they wrote in cursive or if they printed, because I was trying to actually test what I had learned. And so it's just a little interesting thing.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Go ahead.
My handwriting is illegible because I just have bad arthritis.
Yeah,
Okay,
my
next
cursive
one.
is horrible.
Yes, I can relate to that.
Okay, so right now we're looking at one of the pages, right? One of these journal pages of Kamel.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little blurry, but I think we can make out most of it.
We don't actually know that this is Kamel's. We were told it was. But
right.
It's just, for this analysis, I call it the journal page.
Okay, the journal page. And this was found, this was found with the other evidence items, right?
No, this was given to you by Natasha.
Okay.
The first part is from the journal pages. And then the second part of this video will go over Kamel's possible handwriting.
Okay. So what do you see here? Tell us about this page. What stands out to you?
Well, I was using this screen right here, this part of it, to show the print writing that we went over for slide 1.
Mm-hmm.
And as we go throughout this presentation, a lot of the things like what we'll see is a left slanted writing with the, let's see here. You go to number 1 for it, and then the workload, the W is leaning leftward, the I is leaning leftward. And if we go to slide 2, I explain the leftward reclined slant.
Okay, let's look at
in
that
regards to that.
Okay, let me know when you can see that on the screen. I know there is a...
It's right there.
Okay.
The leftward reclined slant signifies someone who would rather hold on to his or her emotions, hold them on the inside, and has a fear of expressing themselves. Might be emotionally cold much of the time. If you expect them to be constant in giving and expressing how they feel towards you, you will most likely be disappointed, meaning a withdrawal of emotional expression. In the next slide, I've highlighted just a few of those left-leaning or leftward slants so that everybody can see for themselves.
Okay, pulling that up now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Wow, that's a lot.
And I mean, these are just a few of them that I could pick out as I was working on this. So yeah, there's quite a bit.
Okay, we're going to move on here to the next slide, number 3.
Okay. This was most likely written with a broad felt tip pen. It has the appearance of being written with heavy pressure, but that is because of the pen. Showing strong-willed, firm and easily excited with hot-blooded actions. Negatively, they could be stern, stubborn, and inclined to melancholy and depression, and you would definitely know when they're around you. And down here is on the next slide, or yes, the next slide will be the sample that I picked.
Okay, we're going to look at that now.
Both pages of that journal piece is very consistent with being written with a broad felt tip pen and heavy pressure. Since they chose that type of a writing instrument, it's just going to leave the impression that it was written heavily.
Okay. Now we're going to go to number 4, sharp writing.
Sharp writing manages clean, dry writing strokes that are restrained and reserved, spiritual and idealistic. They are usually verbally articulate and discriminating, projecting a sense of subtle nuisance and irony. On the downside, sharp writers are cold, resentful, and somewhat unable to enjoy their experiences. I'm sorry, I have to keep moving this back and forth.
Okay.
Inner remoteness, rigidity, and lack of ability to relate on a physical level contributes to their special brand of loneliness. They can often see themselves as heroes. And the slide right after that is another sample of the journal page. Both pieces of that journal page show sharp writing, where you could clearly see what's being said. All the letters are written very clearly. You don't see any fading out of the pressure in any of the, like near the end of the word or letter. Sometimes they'll loosen up on or ease up on the pressure, but that wasn't done at all for the journal page, where it will kind of fade out. Everything is just very clear, very sharp.
Okay. Here's number 5. Spacing within the words is a combination of wide letters with narrow spaces between them, which reveals a person who gives himself latitude but crowds others. This writer can be egotistic and self-centered. That's an interesting one there, because David has been accused of being egotistic, a narcissist, and I don't know what your views are on that, but number 5 was a very interesting one that stuck out to me.
Okay.
Now,
it is true. They have accused him of that.
Now, I do want to say that I don't believe that that's true. I want to make that clear that I don't believe that, but I don't know him either, so I can't really say. But just on the little that I've looked into it, and based on the speakings that I've seen David Crowley do, I don't know. I just don't see it. That doesn't mean that it's not there, but it's just I just don't see it.
If he was narcissistic and egotistic, he wouldn't ask his wife, "Do you mind if I record this?" And he's sounding all concerned for her during the whole rapture recording, as he's trying to think and replay what happened. He asked her in the very beginning, "Are you okay? Do you mind if I record this?" And I just don't see him asking that if he was self-centered, egotistical, and narcissistic. He seemed more concerned about her well-being.
Yeah, I mean, and when people are like, "Well, how come he was recording her?" Like this was there was something going on here. And whatever your view is on, the spiritual, on demons, anything like that, from what they were talking about, if you really listen to what they are talking about, they're talking about something um, that is bothering them. If a physical presence, whatever you want to call it, there's something there. That was my view on that recording. I don't think David was doing it to make his wife look crazy. I think he was doing it to just document something that is like, totally strange and totally out of left field, and something that a lot of people don't ever really want to talk about. So I don't think he was doing it to make her look crazy. I think it was used. I think in Eric Nelson's Sloppymentary, I think that footage was used to try to make Kamel look crazy. Not necessarily to make David look crazy, but to make her look crazy. And it just goes back to the fact that I don't think that either of them were crazy. Because even when they are talking about this, to me, they don't sound crazy. They sound like people that are trying to work through it, that are really trying to figure out what the heck just happened here.
And that's when you got to ask yourself, are they being targeted? Or at least can know? Like a targeted individual? For her to be experiencing something like that? And crazy people do not question if they're crazy. They just live in their own little world. They don't question, hey, I feel like I'm going crazy. They don't say that.
Right. And she had no problem wondering that, which is what anybody would actually wonder. Come on. Of course, that's a natural thing. But like you said, that doesn't mean that the person is crazy. Usually means that they're not. Number 6 here. Spacing between words. Need to maintain his distance from social contact, either due to an inner need for privacy or to a tendency towards isolation, sometimes reinforced by difficulty in communicating with others.
And on the next slide, where I put in an example, you'll see large spaces between the wording.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, let's look at, there's like a little arrow bracket where it says, so I've looped with this by the Ed McMahon syndrome. You'll see very large spaces, and then the words are scrunched together.
What does that tell you? What do you get from that?
Just basically that they need to maintain a distance, social contact, privacy, and they don't have, they value their personal space, but not people around them. And so, like with number 5, mm-hmm. where if we can go back to that slide, mm-hmm. right there, number 5, but they crowd others, they give themselves plenty of space, but they crowd others. It's kind of contradicts yourself when you're talking about it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're just thinking this out, right? We're just talking about this. We're not trying to say that we have it all figured out or anything, but obviously we're just discussing all of these possibilities, and this
isn't.
Go ahead.
This is just an analysis. Not every single person falls into these categories. But if you see it consistently in writing, in a person's writing, then it usually means that it's the truth. If you only see it once or twice, then it can just be a fluke.
We have a comment here from She-Wolf in the live chat, and she says that it looks like 2 different people wrote that. So I went back one page here to kind of look at this to see if there's any specific places where it kind of looks like two people wrote this. Because my view, I had taken it at face value. They say that this is what Kamel wrote, and I have no reason right now to doubt that.
It does in some places. Like the first page looks like it was written by one person. The second page, to me, looks like it was written by a totally different person. Some people have even said that it looks like 3 different people wrote this. I honestly do not know
And
about
that's some
that one. I couldn't see that.
and that's something people said about what they say David wrote, right? They say that the two sentences that David wrote in the office bedroom also look like they were written by 2 different people, or the handwriting just looks different, right? It just looks off. Now, for me, as somebody who writes, who always writes, on paper, in print, I can go back and look at my handwriting and see all of the different types, and I can see where it is possible that, depending on how I'm feeling, depending on how my hand is, depending on a lot of different factors, my writing yesterday might look different than my writing now.
Okay. And that is true. I've noticed that with me too, where like one day I'll feel more artistic in handwriting, or at least I used to. And so I'll kind of make some letters bigger and more flamboyant, and then the next day it's just like I'm in a rush, blah, 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 just get it done. I think it has to do with your mood too, depending on how much time
Okay.
you
All
have. Okay, next.
All right. We're looking at number 7 here. Low T-bar.
Mm-hmm. The low T-bar, shown by the T-bar cross, which is the little slice that goes across the T, and low T-bar shown by the T-bar crossed very low on the stem. This person fears failure, resists change. He or she is rarely successful enough in his own eyes despite his accomplishments. They are too hard on themselves. And the next slide, you'll see, and I'll point out where the low T's are.
Okay. Give it a second here.
Okay.
There you go.
We look at, what is this word? Emotionally means. Okay. I'm just skimming it real fast.
Okay. I'm just gonna
Wife is the exhausted breadwinner. The T is a low T-bar. To her dream chasing husband, the T is a low T-bar. There's nothing wrong. That T is a low T-bar. With this low T-bar, as long as the husband, is a low T-bar. There's quite a few. I mean, they're very consistent with the low T-bars. Instead, on the next line, is a low T-bar. Get is a little bit higher up than for not, is also, again, low T-bar. So they're very consistent throughout their handwriting.
Okay.
And that just shows that they fear failure, that they resist change. They barely see themselves as being a successful person. It's actually kind of sad. The next slide, I kind of highlighted where some were, when I enlarged it. The negative, right underneath emotionally stunted, isolated is a low T-bar. Point on opinionated to the point was a low T bar. And then, so I was just trying to find some altogether as an example. But as you read throughout that journal page, you'll really see that they are pretty consistent with that. And then the Y chart, several different styles of how they wrote the Y. There is loner, which is just the Y, and there's no loop at all. It's just a straight stick figure loop. I mean, it's a stick figure Y, I'm sorry. And it's considered like a loner with no loop. It just means that they're psychic frustration and socially selective in their personality. Okay. And if we go to the next slide, I highlighted those Ys and the stick figure Y without the loop.
Okay, let's look at that.
It's in maturity. And then the next one, there's no loop whatsoever in these Ys.
In the maturity, okay, and the your,
and then
yourself.
But I missed a couple.
Yeah, in really and naturally, those look kind of curved, right?
They are, but there's no loop whatsoever.
No loop. I gotcha. Okay.
And then there's a lot of stick figure ones.
It's almost like, yeah, I mean, it's interesting.
And we're dealing with print writing too, so it's kind of hard to do a lot of the graphology analysis with the garlands and things. That would have been much easier to do an analysis on.
And the garland is, what is a garland again? This is all
a garland with cursive. It will look just like if you put like a Christmas tree garland up, or when you're decorating your house and you do the wavy loops. And that's when you do cursive, it looks like a Christmas garland. And that really tells a lot about a person's personality. And with that, you'll also see the loops of the Ys and the Gs and Fs and the Js. Just it will tell a lot about a person. Whether they're very open, closed, that kind of thing. Okay, the next one, 2 different capital I's that were printed, clear, constructive thinking, independent, and a desire to stand out. Then the stick figure I, very independent, culturally aware, and mature. The lowercase I, most of the lowercase i's has the dot off to the right side, which shows impatience. Just that they weren't patient enough to go back and dot directly above. And I tried to highlight these, but there was a lot of them in this writing.
Yeah, I can see it. Looking at some of those. Very aggressive. Okay, we're gonna go here to number 10.
You want to take this one?
Sure. Wide left margin, avoidance of the past, sense of culture, vitality, communicative. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember when I write. and it really all depends too, like what I'm writing at the same time. Something like this, I would probably want to structure. I mean, I like the structure of this image that we're seeing here. I could see myself doing something similar towards it. Um, the Ed McMahon syndrome, the whole underlining. I don't know if we've touched on that or why that was underlined. Why some of these things are underlined, not just underlined once, but underlined twice is what it kind of looks like, or a back and forth. But to me, this kind of looks the avoidance of the past. Okay, explain to me the connection with the avoidance of the past. What is a connection with the wide left margin there?
I'm not exactly sure if this would be consistent with this particular writer, but there must have been, if it is a consistent writing trait with this particular writer, then something must have happened in the past with them. It could have been just something tragic. It could have been some type of abuse going on. It could have just been something that they do not want to focus on anymore. They want to sidestep it. Sorry, I was letting my cat in.
Sense of culture. That was another one too that I was like, I don't really know if I understand what it means by sense of culture. Any clarification on that?
It could have been a writing style that they learned as they were growing up.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing because they lived in Saudi. They were born in Saudi Arabia, Kamel and her sister and her family, and then they moved to Pakistan, and then from Pakistan they moved to Texas. So I'd be curious to know at what point that Kamel not only started writing in English but started speaking it, and if that has any value in this discussion on the handwriting here. That and
my opinion is that it would have had to have been very early on in her life for speaking, because she does not have an accent at all.
that's true. Now, and I mean, she was born in Saudi Arabia, yes, but she was born on a U.S. military base in Saudi Arabia, so that needs to be clear too. It wasn't like she was just born in Saudi Arabia. It's a big difference. Living on a military base in Saudi Arabia is almost like living in a U.S. state inside of Saudi Arabia, I would think. It's all Americanized, and I think Saudi Arabia is very Americanized, I guess I would say, for lack of a better term. Go ahead.
Do you know if they were homeschooled with a tutor or if they went to a school?
I don't know.
But
yeah.
Because if they were, if not Natasha, but if Sidra and Camille were taught by the same person, their writing styles would be very similar.
Interesting. All right, number 11 here. Angular strokes. Stick figure keeps emotions under control. Chooses to act rather than react. He opts for directness of approach. Qualities of maturity and independence are to be found in this writer, as well as the ability to make quick decisions and to eliminate unnecessary details.
And what the stick figure strokes actually mean is when we are pointing out the G's, the Y's, the Q's, those are all stick figures. The F, if it was to go in the lower zone, the low part of the F, for instance, if they were writing in cursive and that went into the low zone, then that would show a stick figure. But this writing shows a lot of stick figures. It kind of correlates with the Y, where let me go back to that slide. The Y chart, where there's no loop, is just a stick, basically, and that's what they call it. It's just angular strokes, and they're stick figures. So, like, the P doesn't have a loop. Y's, G's. Okay. And so that's what that one is called. And they wrote, are we going to the next slide? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to 12.
Okay. Now this is what's considered a dominant middle zone, where the person writes in a really thick middle zone, and it often represents a person who is about 20 years old or early 20s. There's no long-term plans really for them. They're really thinking in the now and not in the future. Focused on friends, social media, and social skills. Just a very young type writer, or emotionally young. And you'll see that a lot with the sample that I provided. And once again, right now we're focusing just on the journal pages, not Camel's handwriting yet, or possible Camel's handwriting. And you'll see where on the second line, the it, for that sample that I had for number 12, the page before this, that is very dominant in the middle zone. The is very dominant. So everything, the letters are pretty much same size in height. Okay. If you want to go into the next slide.
Okay. Handwriting from the notebook that is possibly Camel's handwriting that the BCA collected. Alright, looking at number 1. Normal upper zone, the realm of the mind and the guardian of the spiritual aspirations. Okay, now we're getting into the spiritual. It's a whole nother issue here. Thinking about how the mind, they say the pen is mightier than the sword, but when you're writing down, you're writing from your mind. It's directly putting your mind on paper. Writing is just such a fascinating thing for me. It's subjective, and I think it's very different for each person, but the fact of human writing has always been a fascination. So let me go ahead and reread that. Normal upper zone, the realm of the mind and the guardian of the spiritual aspirations. With the normal upper zone, you can see the actual intellect, the imagination, the illusion, fantasy, and the drive for power. That's a powerful statement there. Well-portioned loops and stems with sensibly placed I dots and T bars reveal mental capacity and alertness. Interesting.
And we're focusing on the handwriting, or right now starting Camel's possible handwriting that was collected at the BCA. We're no longer talking about the journal.
Correct. This is from the notepad. I don't know if this is in the beginning or in the end. I think this is closer to the end, but I could be wrong. But here we are looking at this, which was probably written in 2011, maybe later. That's when this budget book started. But if this was towards the end, I mean, we don't really know. Each page is not dated, but
I was hoping I might be able to find something in the bank statements that we had in regards to this, because she's writing down notes for an order that she just took. And I had to break this page into two parts so that we could fit it onto the slides. And so it's really one notebook page of a whole bunch of notes, and you can see her thinking through the process where she's going back over and tracing these letters and kind of going over where, especially like when she wrote 24 cupcakes, she marks it out, she puts 36, so she must be on the phone or discussing this order with a person and talking it through with them. And then she goes back and she'll trace over the letters for Sunday, for 100, at the end of budget. She's really thinking about this order as she's writing everything down in her notes.
Yeah, that's right. So even the flavor with the question mark might have been written at a different time than the answer. The serving size,
And,
1, 2, 3, 4 might have been questions, and then after speaking with whoever she was speaking to, they have the answers next to them. But Sunday is definitely, written over a couple times. Same with the budget, the $100 looks like it is too. It's an interesting name too. Actually, I'm gonna go back 1 second. Noah's Ark. B Noah's Ark. That's just I don't know. It's just there is a, the more that I research this case, there is a spiritual tie. There is a Christian tie to this. I did not realize until recently that the college that Kamel went to, I think it was Baylor, was actually it was a Christian college. So unless I'm wrong with that, when Kamel was in Texas, unless I'm wrong or something, when she was in Texas, she was going to a Christian college, which I found fascinating, if true. Anyways, yeah, we're looking at number 2 here. Gonna go ahead.
The normal middle zone. This is the zone that shows that the writer thinks of herself and her role in life, and how she can be expected to project the self-image onto others is expressed in the middle zone. This area reveals the quality and consistency of effort towards the conscious pursuit of goals. Middle zone emphasis is upon social and work, and shows actual progression into the environment. Medium height and well balanced with other zones and well-formed letters indicate a wholesome self-confidence and sensible adjustment to life. And see, that sounds completely different than that journal page. Like a totally different person, where they wrote in the dominant middle zone. And you'll see, like, the S is the upper zone. The flavor, of course, the O in flavor would be higher than the rest of the letters. Everything seems very consistent for the different zones. Date, time needed. You'll see the large N, the capital N, and then the smaller letters. Again, Sunday, budget, all the letters, they seem very consistent. Normal upper, very consistent middle zone, except for the budget where that one didn't go all the way into the lower zone, the G in that. But that just could have been because she was thinking and writing fast.
Okay. Let's go to number 3.
Okay. And once again, we're talking about the zones. We're talking this time about the normal lower zone, or the LZ, which is below the level of consciousness. Inborn biological drives Instinctual urges for security and satisfaction and marital demands jostle here with unacknowledged memories and experiences from the first hours of life. In our culture, this powerful realm of drives and sensations is the most private. And I chose a different part of it's the same part of the notes that she was writing. This is just the lower part. And I chose this mainly so I could point out the lower zones.
Okay.
Like for plain, that very first top letter, it says 18 plain ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll see 28 to 30 people.
Yep.
Okay, and then the turquoise, the large leaves, burgundy, okay. And the G for green, a dab of green, leaf green, mint green. It's further down. It's right underneath turquoise, where she has the different colors that she's going to be mixing for the number 2 small diamond. And these are all showing normal lower zones.
Okay. Move on to number 4.
You want to take this one?
Sure. Okay. Wow, this is a big one. The vertical writing, or the AB slant, with the normal slight incline slant. Vertical writing is a type of head-over-heart emotional attitude. She is open to the experiences of the moment, but her responses are cautious and considered. Her emotional expression is under control, and the manner is under demonstrative and independent. This person could make a great leader or contented loser. Wow, that's powerful right there. Okay, we'll come back to that one. The person is self-interested and asks, what can the situation do for me? This person will appeal to judgment rather than to emotion. We know Kamel was very scientific. Often a great deal of personal magnetism and a dry wit that is quite attractive. Now there is a slight natural incline to some of her letters. This shows that the writer is normally sensitive and emotionally healthy, but modest with responses. Again, sounds like Kamel to me. Judgment and logic rule, yet more sympathy and compassion are expressed here than in the vertical slant.
And this is very, very different than that left-leaning slant from the journal page.
Right. It's more of a vertical.
And I included both parts of the of that notebook page. And if you go through the notebook that the BCA collected, you will notice that all of her handwriting has a vertical, it's very vertical with a natural incline to it. And the samples of her handwriting throughout the household, also in the photos from the crime scene, and also what the BCA took photos, there's several different sets. All her examples of handwriting are throughout the house. They're on pictures, little stickies, on a filing cabinet, it's on the refrigerator, and all of it shows vertical writing.
Which you think is different than what is shown in the in that journal page?
In the journal.
Could that just be because it was written at a different time? Different time in her life, and when was that journal page written? Do we know exactly? I don't think we know. I don't know, obviously,
I
exactly,
don't
but
think we were ever given a date of when it was written.
right. Okay, let's move on here to number 5. Her handwriting is mainly written with the heavy pressure, meaning that she would make quite an impression on people, and she definitely did. Kamel did. In my
Hmm.
view, she definitely did. She most likely would have had a great deal of energy, which I also think is true of Kamel. They are expressive, strong-willed, firm, and at times hot-blooded. I'm not going to go too far here, but yeah. Every woman could be hot-blooded given circumstances, sure. Negatively, they can be stern, stubborn, and inclined to sad, blue thoughts or to depression, or depression. You would certainly know if they were around you. So she had a presence, right? I don't think there's any
Hmm.
doubt that she had a glowing presence, and I think Kamel is one of the more um, positive aspects of this whole case. And it was very curious and very disturbing when I talked to several members of the quote unquote Gray State team and how they spoke about Kamel. Um, and I'll just leave it at that, I think. But, um, yeah, just leave it at that. Alright, so you included this photo here. So this is obviously, again, from the notepad. This notepad, 59 pages. It began as a budget book, and I believe this is towards the end of that notepad, and it ended as more of a recipe, more of Kamel's book, which made it weird that I mean, there's some of David's stuff in here too. But when this notepad was opened up, somebody opened this up with bloody fingers, right, with blood, opened it up and decided to write 2 notes onto this notepad. That began as an 80-page notepad, front and back, but when the police found it, it was only 59 pages. So, again, nothing that they found shows motive, and nothing that the police found or nothing that they've ever found has shown why they think David Crowley is guilty.
Correct. And even though I only included one little sample, you'll notice as you look through the BCA, that notebook collected by the BCA,
Mm-hmm.
or through the photos of the crime scene, that what we discussed tonight is very consistent in regards to her possible handwriting. And I have to say possible because even though it seems kind of, sorry, I mean, it to me, unless Rainey was very grown up, I don't think she would be making these types of notes. And it was at the crime scene. David and Kamel lived in that house. You would think, okay, well, that's got to be Kamel's handwriting. But we got to say it's possible until somebody tells us differently that it wasn't Kamel's handwriting.
Correct.
And the police even say possible handwriting.
Right, because they didn't bother to do the test that would show that it was or that it wasn't, for whatever reason.
Correct.
Which is a whole nother issue there, but basically, they do not know who wrote anything in that house. They're just guessing. Okay.
Correct.
All right, number 6 here.
Larger than life-size handwriting shows the writer's need to make an impression, to be observed, to win recognition. They act with boldness, enthusiasm, and optimism. Well-balanced spacing always gives evidence of the writer's social maturity, intelligence, and inner organization. She was able to deal flexibly and objectively with herself and with other people. Normal spacing between the lines on the page gives clues to the orderliness and clarity of her thinking and to the amount of the interactions that she wishes to have with her environment. Normal spacing has its own personal harmony and flexibility. And I chose several samples.
Okay, let's look at that. Looking at the buttercream versus SMBC. I'm not sure what SMBC is. Best vanilla recipe.
It's a type of frosting.
Okay. Best vanilla recipe. Get the best red. How to make a fondue bow. Ooh, that's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
She was very gifted. She was a very gifted cake maker. I've seen some of the cakes that she made, and it's very impressive.
They're gorgeous.
They are, and you have to, you got to be very patient. Chefs know that. And anyone who does any type of cooking, especially baking, you got to have some type of patience. You got to have tolerance. So.
The next sample, I took this one off of the refrigerator. There's a photo in both the BCA photos and the Apple Valley Police photos of the refrigerator. And what I did was I cropped it where she wrote, "David, ooh, you make my heart squeak." And once again, you'll see where everything is very larger than life.
Yep, we're looking at that.
There was another one that she wrote. I should have chose that one too, and I apologize to the audience. And grab it.
Is that the folded up? The one that was folded up?
I will always. This was on the file cabinet, and it says, "I will always, always love you for
ever."
Forever, but it was spelled incorrectly. And the Good Morning Lover.
And those are both in the office bedroom, right?
The Good Morning Lover, I believe, was on a mirror. I think it was a bathroom mirror.
Okay, in the master bedroom, bathroom maybe.
And then there was another note that said, "D, I love you, baby," and K. And those are like bold. I'm going to add all of these to the group. But they're also in the photos for the crime scene. These were all things that showed the larger than life.
Yep, and we have another comment here from Lynn Treasure that says SMBC Swiss meringue buttercream. That does sound good.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you for that.
That actually does sound good.
That does sound really good. Although butter, I'm trying to stay away from butter and from cream, but that's a whole nother issue here. But David, oh, you make my heart squeak. This reminded me of that song, Wild Thing. You make my heart sing. It's kind of that type of thing. And they were heavily writing notes to each other, and I know that's been a big issue. And it's something that very early on, one of the big questions was who wrote this image that we're looking at now. It is important to note that this image that we're looking at right now was not meant to be photographed. In the BCA documents, in the BCA notes, this was an image that they did not mean to actually photograph, but they were able to use this later to compare handwriting samples. So this is one of the things that I believe, according to what the documents say, it seemed like this is one of the things that they used to compare Kamel's handwriting. And the other thing is that even though the full image of this shows 2 or 3 people, going back and forth, this handwriting on the refrigerator is only credited to Kamel, not to anybody else.
yes, there's like a whole bunch of E's, and then there's like a little squiggly line, and then E again. At the very bottom part of that note that was on the refrigerator, it says E, go
Mm-hmm.
suck 2 eggs,
Right.
and then signed egg. So it must have been like some type of a joke going on,
Yeah.
a little playful banter going back and forth. And as a woman who was married, if I was having any type of issues with my husband at the time, and I saw notes, especially near the end of our marriage, I would have never, ever, ever left those notes up on the walls.
Very
They
good
would have
point.
been taken down.
Very good point. Linnea Treasure also says, I read somewhere towards the end Camille was involved in Gray State and David trusted only her. That is exactly true. That is exactly one of the main points there, and David even makes that clear in one of his last emails that he ever made in late December to Jason Allen, and he tells Jason Allen, who is a producer in Hollywood. Jason Allen is actually part of the Directors Guild or something like that. So, but anyways, David tells him that it's just me and my wife, and they were in the end they were the only two. David and Camille were the only two that were working on making Gray State into a TV series. There were no other Gray State team members. Nobody else was involved with it to that point. Um, that was their new trustworthy team, was David and his wife. People always talk about um, how Kamel felt about the Gray State project, and we can go back and forth. People can have their own views on it, but it is a fact that Kamel was wearing a Gray State T-shirt when her body was found. I mean, we're talking cradle to the grave stuff here because, to me, that seems very hardcore. That she was in this. She was in this. This was a ride or die thing. They were gonna make this happen. I think they were on their way out. I think they were going to move to Cali, because if you're gonna be involved with a project that is going to cost $30 million, and David was going to get some money up front too. You know, you need to be out here. You got to be out here. You can't be in cold ass Minnesota. But okay, so right now, any significance in this image that we're looking at here, or should we keep moving on?
It just showed that the larger than life examples where she writes really big, and let's go to the next slide, and I can point out where once again she's writing really large.
You're talking here, the small cake.
The one before that, this is 18 plain ones.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. Looking at the 18 plain ones here.
And you'll see just very large writing within the lines for the plain ones. Then you go down to the one that's circled, and it says base and avocado, very large, plus turquoise, very large. And right underneath that, large leaves, she wrote, again, very large. Number 2, small diamond. Number 3, the large diamond. These are all, it's very large writing. So that's just showing that she was, what it said in number 6, larger than average size handwriting. Okay, so we're at number 7 now. I need to be able to read this all together. Let me click out of the live chat.
How dare you?
I'm sorry, I
That's
have to
okay.
be able to read it.
That's more important right now, sure.
Sharp writing manages clean, dry writing strokes, are restrained and reserved, spiritual and idealistic. They are usually verbally articulate and discriminating, projecting a sense of subtlety, nuance, and irony. On the downside, sharp writers can be cold, resentful, or somewhat unable to enjoy their experiences. Inner remoteness, rigidity, and a lack of ability to relate on a physical level contribute to their special brand of loneliness. They can often see themselves as heroes. Now, we see the sharp writing where it doesn't really fade out or it's not whiter at the end of the letters.
And is that on
And
the writing on the refrigerator that you're talking about here?
yes, I chose several examples, but all her writings are very consistent with this.
Okay.
Where you can clearly read what she's writing.
Right.
And I think it's also attributed to the type of pen she was using, which I believe most of it was either like
Sharpie.
this one.
This is
might
the
have
Sharpie
been
right here, right?
probably a narrow Sharpie or a fine tip. And the next one looks like either a fine tip felt pen or
This one looks like an old school big pen.
okay, thank you.
All
Yeah,
right.
you're right. I can see it better right there. Yeah.
Yeah, which is, I mean,
Mhm.
that's the pen that was found at the crime scene too. I think it was something like that. But why you have, you know, I mean, there's so many questions about this notepad in general. But let me try to stay focused for once in my life here. With number 8, lowercase d, stem high and retracted. Quiet pride and dignity, independent, will not show hurt feelings. Okay, so where's this lowercase d? For the dozen, the needed,
We got it unneeded,
budget.
which is number 3.
Mm-hmm.
Budget, dozen. We got the large. It says
Day is a little different because Sunday is a little different, but that Sunday was, was written over at least once to clarify Sunday, I guess. But and the 6 large, can't see what
I'm not
that's.
exactly sure what
Yeah.
that word is.
It looks like it starts with a D, but I can't tell. So she might have been writing down, but quiet
And we're
pride,
going to come back.
dignity. Mm-hmm.
We're going to come back to lowercase d
Okay.
before the end of this because hers is a little bit different than most people. And this you will not see in the journal writings, this trait, when we come back to it. The lowercase I, rounded and placed over the stem, order, method, precise, consistence. Oh gosh, can you help me out with this?
Conscientiousness.
Thank you. Good memory and concentration.
All right, let's look at that here. And then we're going to look at where some of these areas are highlighted, where the eyes are highlighted. You can see the yellow markers there. We got quite a few.
And normally you will see them either right above it, except for turquoise. That was a little bit different. But most of her writing, you'll see it almost directly above the eye stem.
Yep, the turquoise is a little fast.
Mm-hmm.
The 18 plain ones, that's almost cursive. It's almost like,
And
yeah,
decorated.
yeah, decorated. All right. Anything there, or else we're gonna move on to number 12, the lower D.
We're going to move on to number 12. And just because she has this trait doesn't mean that anything actually happened in her past. It could just, I didn't notice any other felon's clause in her handwriting samples or possible handwriting samples. So even though she has this, you see this in her handwriting, we are not sure what this signifies. So for the lower D, this is written as a felon's clause. Now, not every person with this formation will necessarily act on such impulses at the time. This person might self-harm, such as tattoos, body piercings, might cheat, habitually provoke others, and show signs of childhood abuse. We know that she had tattoos. We know that she had a nose piercing. We don't know about the others. If you'd like to move on to the slide, I highlighted the felon clause. Those
Okay.
lower D's right there,
Mhm.
you'll notice that they kind of loop and point down in some places. They have that particular little loop on them. And I can find some samples of other people's to show that it's consistent with what a lowercase d felon clause is.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
as I said, I didn't find any of the other types of felon clause with her handwriting. So this could be just a personality trait that she had.
So, the decorated definitely looks different than the diamond and the avocado, right?
Decorated.
So the 18 decorated
Yes.
equals $40. Like the way those are kind of like, the D has a little end, but when you look at the avocado and the diamond, those ones don't.
And then if you go back up to dab of leaf green,
Mhm.
which is over there, you'll see that D again. I did add some other samples too.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay, so we'll go to the next one here. Dozens. Discount. Needed. Budget under. Okay. Oh, wow. We're cursing now. Okay, here we go. Number
Okay,
8
this is
here.
an interesting trait. And I mean, what page is this? Okay. Sorry. Canal writing has a FUK in her handwriting. What I mean by this is when she's writing a word and the K is not at the beginning, it's in the middle, it's a capital K. And this type of capital K in her writing means that the writer will not stand for any kind of abuse, whether emotional or verbal. She would have told David to go F himself or F off if he ever tried to act that way towards her.
Wow.
And let's find some samples of that. Noah's Ark, capital K, at the end, right there.
The
and
David
then
O.
the one after that, David, you make my heart squeak, another capital K.
Okay.
The next one is a sample of the budget, another big K at the end of a word. And it can even be like if she was to write make and use the capital K instead of a lowercase, that would also be an example, but if it was used in the middle of the word too. I just thought that was pretty interesting, and that's why I had added it at the end. And now we're going to compare and contrast possible handwriting from Camille versus the journal page. Number one, Camille has the felon's claw lower d or lowercase d, where the journal page does not. And I included the sample of her possible handwriting. And then if we can go to the next slide.
Okay.
This is
now we're looking
the
at
next slide is
the journal page.
The D is not the felon's claw.
The D in the
for the
everything.
Journal page, breadwinner. It doesn't have that tilt or that little type loop that she would write for her D's.
Okay.
And then the next one, the capital E is a normal E where, for Camille, she would write her capital E as a normal E. The journal page would write their E's at a slant, a leftward leaning slant, and as a Greek E. You see that twice in the journal page. And if we could go to the next slide.
Sure. Possible handwriting from Camille. Looking at electricity here. Excel, electricity.
And I pulled those from the budgets, but it's not the Greek E.
It's not the Greek E. I mean, could this be a fast E versus a slow E? You know, like one...
Even so, with that left-leaning slant, I mean, that's extremely left-leaning.
Emotionally stunted, yeah.
I accidentally added that. I meant to add the Ed Big Band syndrome. I apologize to the audience. They'll see that in just a minute.
Okay.
Kimmel wrote some of her S's with a loop at the bottom of it, where the journal page does not have the loop. You'll see it in small cakes, securing, size, Sunday, and then we go to the journal page.
Okay, I'm going to go there next. And I apologize that last slide, number 3, had some things cut off. That was my fault. I missed that.
You'll see that the S's are very open. And you'll also see in the middle where it says Ed McMahon syndrome, and that E is at a tilt and it's a Greek E.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some of this looks like, especially with the negatives, it kind of looks like all of the first letters are kind of tilted. You know, not all of them, but some of the first ones are. And I kind of, you know, it all depends on the way that you're sitting, what you're doing, right? How you're writing there, and you want to get the best possible handwriting. And Camille, she was a college grad, and so she was probably used to writing out different things. I would hope. So
Well, considering that you look at all the samples that are in the notebook and then around the house, you don't see any left-leaning slants whatsoever. They're all very vertical, or not vertical, up and down.
why does that stand out to you? What is that?
It means two different people wrote these. Somebody else wrote this.
This page that we're looking at now.
Mm-hmm. If we go back to her handwriting, I encourage the audience to please look at the different notebook pages that are in the group. We have them in the file section. Go back there, look at them. You will see the difference between her handwriting that's in this notebook versus the journal page. Two completely different people wrote this. One is Camille for sure. The other one is not her.
Okay. Let's look at number 4 here.
Camille mostly wrote with her D from the top to the bottom. The journal page D was written from the bottom to the top. You see diamond?
Yep.
Large diamond. Okay. Where there's one stroke and then she does a stroke downwards. Again, a stroke downwards with a loop. And then we go, oh, darn it, I meant to add the journal page sample.
Because the journal page, is that the same
Yes.
one with the negatives and positives?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all
Yes,
right.
please.
We're there right now. Might be a 5-second delay on your side.
For the positives,
Mm-hmm.
for the direct that's up in the positives, you'll see it's a slice down. Then they took it from the bottom and went straight up. For the capital D in direct.
Right. Compared to the one that we're looking at now with the small diamond, it's the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
In both cases. Even though the difference in number 2 and number 3 is a little bit different, it's still, yeah, I see what you're saying. Top to bottom.
And I apologize to the audience for not including that sample.
All right. Okay, let's go to number 5 here.
Okay. Number 5. Camille mostly traces over her letters, or Camille traces over her letters as she's thinking about what she would like to make notes on. The journal page does not have this trait at all. There's no tracing. If she's thinking about her marriage and the different traits and everything, there's no tracing over. We have several samples of her doing it as she's making notes. Sunday is traced over. Cupcakes is traced over. The next slide shows even more of that. More
Small
handwriting
cupcakes.
from
Budget underneath.
again. More tracing of her handwriting. Where she's thinking about everything. And then we get to the journal page where you would think, oh my goodness, that trait would be there. We don't see it at all.
All right, number 6 here.
Number 6, Camille writes her V clearly and vertical, where the journal page V and the T especially, or the T and the H especially, are at a left-handed angle and is usually extremely close together, almost on top of each other. Here we go with possible handwriting sample from Camille. The T and the H in Beth, very vertical, spaced. The T and the H in birthday, once again, very vertical and spaced. We go to the journal page. You'll see a difference there.
All right.
Let's look at the journal page. Where the V's, the T-bar is at a slant for that very top one. The second one further down next to Ed McMahon syndrome, T-bar again, is at a vertical slant. So is the T. And you'll see the next one, not stir the boat. That T and H are almost on top of each other. We see it again. All these have a left-leaning vertical slant to them also. And I included the second page of that journal page. If you want to go to the next slide. And showing the T and the H's together. Greg? Are you there?
Sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, I'm here. Let me go to the next. I think we had a drop off here. We'll see if we can get Sophia back here. But that is the end. Thank you for listening to us tonight. I'm gonna wait for Sophia to come back on here. I hope the audio is okay. Let me check the audio. Just gonna check it on my second source here. I had a little audio mishap here. So we'll see if we can get Sophia back. Yeah, you lost me for a second, but I am back. So Paulette's here. Everybody's here. Anybody have any questions, any comments, any concerns here? This is a very interesting discussion. And I'm glad that we had it. Again, my knowledge on handwriting or anything like that is very, very limited. Very very limited. We'll just keep it at that. Yeah. Can you hear us?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of.
Okay.
Did we lose you? I don't know who we lost. We lost one of us, but we're here.
I don't know. I was talking and I was asking you to move to the next slide, and
yeah,
I didn't hear anything, so it must be me.
Okay. So we're here. We're at the last slide here, and just kind of thanking everybody for joining us. I had talked with She-Wolf and kind of told her this is going to be a very controversial topic because it's very subjective, right? I mean, we're talking about somebody else's handwriting, but we're not scared to talk about this stuff. We're not scared to sit here and pontificate on some of these things and to just kind of say, oh, okay, well, as part of our research, These are things that we have to actually do. And the only difference is we're doing them live, not behind closed doors and not censoring ourselves. We're trying to have real conversations as real human beings about a real serious case here. I mean, we're talking about a case where a United States soldier is accused of killing his wife, killing his 5-year-old daughter, and then committing suicide. That's not something that we should take lightly. Now, I understand why some might want to take it lightly, but the Apple Valley Police Department, this is not something that they should have taken lightly. All of the people that worked with David, all of the people that were gung-ho with everything that David was doing, they were right there. They wanted to be part of it. When there was money involved, you had a lot of people knocking on David's door. As soon as David dies, those people scatter. And we're left to kind of pick up those pieces when David is being added to stats of domestic violence. He's being added to stats that he should not be added to PTSD. I mean, there are so many people who hear a couple things about this case and just think that, well, of course he's guilty. If he wasn't guilty, they wouldn't have made a documentary about it. There wouldn't be so many of these people writing about it.
And this journal page was given to us, and we were told that it was Camille who wrote this. But compared to her possible handwriting that was in the notebook that the BCA took from the house, if she wrote it, she either has different personalities or somebody wrote the journal page and it was not her. And I gladly welcome somebody from the group to take this to another person who is certified and have them and do an analysis on the journal page versus her handwriting that was in the notebook.
Right.
And see what you come up
That's
with.
right. That's right.
Because you don't... that vertical slant is very, very significant. For Camille, the left-leaning slant shows a totally different person. That was the biggest giveaway. Now, who wrote it? We don't know. But we were told that it was Camille. The police haven't looked at it. It was never taken into evidence. It just appears, what was it, last year? Given to us by a friend of the family. And we're just supposed to believe that Camille wrote it. Her name's not anywhere on it. David's name is never mentioned in the journal page. They don't even mention that they have a child. Don't you think that that would be something that you would talk about if you're considering your marriage? And the pros and cons? Like a good father? He's a great father? Or, oh, he's too negative towards Rainey. I need to take that into consideration. You don't see it. There's no mention whatsoever of that.
It's true.
I'll type this up completely and I'll add it to the group so other people can take a look, and maybe we can start a PDF type list where other people can add the consistencies and inconsistencies from her writings versus the journal page, and we can be more detailed in regards to that. But to me, I don't find this journal page as a significant piece of evidence.
Yeah, and I would say so too. You know, I don't have any reason to think that Kamel didn't write this. But at the same time, I think Dan Hennon made a really good point that, it's uh, there's
A
nothing here.
distraction?
Yeah, there's nothing here that shows what anybody would be trying to show. If they're trying to make Kamel look like there was an issue between her and David here, I'm not really seeing that. I don't really I don't think that that's the case here. I don't see anything here in this journal page that would lead me to think that there were big problems between Kamel and David. That's just my personal view on it. But um, again, I have no reason to not think that Kamel wrote this. But at the same time, I can't prove that that she did right now. But even if we could, or if we couldn't, I mean, the whole thing is obviously if somebody else wrote it, that's a whole nother issue. But if somebody else wrote it, I don't think that there's anything here that would kind of lead me to think that, okay, well, this is why David killed his wife, which is the purpose of this journal page, which is why it was given to us, was because it was meant to show that there was something here that led to David being guilty. And regardless of your view on this journal page, I don't see anything here that leads to David being guilty.
Mm-mm. No, I don't see it either. And those using it as proof that David's guilty, I don't know. I mean, I just don't see it as proof.
No.
Only because it's just, we have no idea when it was written, who wrote it.
Well, and you would have to discount so many other facts in this case that a lot of people aren't willing to even look at. It's just like, well, just look at this page. Oh, this is it. This answers everything. But you have to discount all of the DNA evidence. You have to discount the fact that they don't know who wrote anything in that house. So many things you have to discount in order to believe that David Crowley is guilty. So when somebody presents a page like this, and I weigh that against everything else that I've researched, you know, I just, yeah, this journal page does not help me see why I should believe that David Crowley is guilty. Now, I will say that the person that I spoke to that gave us this, I do believe that she was sincere, and everybody can have their own view on that. But after talking with her, this journal page, I think, was one of the things why she thought that David Crowley was possibly guilty, and why Sidra might have thought that too. I think that Natasha was a little more open-minded when I talked to her compared to when I talked to Sidra. So I do believe that Natasha tried to keep an open mind on this, and I think Sidra was misled by a lot of people. I think she took the word of the Gray State team, and I think that was a big error on her, and she should not have done that. And they tried to seclude her from people like us, from people that were asking questions. So it's a controlled environment. So when I see this, and I'm told that a page like this is supposed to convince us that David Crowley is guilty, and it obviously doesn't. It's just like it's like what you said about what Dan Hennon said. It's a distraction. But we're still gonna call it out as a. Go ahead.
Did Natasha ever say when this journal page surfaced?
I I don't remember. I'll have to go back and look at that. I have to go back and look at when this was, but um,
Because
again,
if I remember correctly, it was supposedly on a tablet under eating disorders. But this is handwritten. So how could it be on the tablet?
well, unless she said that, I'm not gonna buy that. Um, so I'll have to go back and look at exactly what she said, what the source of this was, where the source of this
Okay.
came from, and I think that will definitely help us. But
I just find it odd because it's definitely handwritten. So it had to have been
oh yeah, this
somewhere if it was in the house.
yeah, I mean
And why
they,
wasn't it taken as a good evidence or a sample of her handwriting?
well,
I don't know.
it just wasn't relevant, right? It wasn't relevant to
Hmm.
the police investigation. So, and if there's some reason for the police to think that it was, then maybe this page needs to be shown to the Apple Valley police and they can see if there is any relevance here. But when you have people going around saying that there is relevance here and the Apple Valley police say that there isn't, you can make your own choice on, who you're going to go with there.
Correct. Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think it's very, very clear. There's no, I mean, yeah, the whole thing is I don't want to bash this journal page because I do believe that Natasha gave this to us, um, that she was sincere giving this to us. Now, that's my personal view on it. Um, so, I mean, I'd rather have this page than not have it. But after reading this, I don't see anything here that would help me understand why David Crowley is guilty. And I know people can say, well, that's just because you're just, there's nothing that's going to convince you that David Crowley is guilty. And that's not true. You know, I began and I will end looking at this case, looking for something, anything to prove David Crowley guilty. But if the police have no motive, if they can't connect any of this stuff, any of the evidence that people keep talking about, if it can't be connected to David, why would I believe David's guilty? That's just not going to happen. So let's
I
look at.
haven't been able to find the motive at
Yeah,
all.
no, there isn't any. No,
We
there
talked.
really isn't. No.
There wasn't finances. He did have a deal. They were working on that. He wasn't walking away from it. He was very optimistic in his email to Jason Allen. I just don't see where they were despondent.
No, but some of that stuff is, some of that stuff, it seems like the Crowley family, Sidros family, Kamel's family, they don't know about that. It seems like they were very compartmentalized. There's a lot of stuff that they do not know of. And I don't know if that's true, but I want to make sure that they know everything, that they know all of these facts before they just say that their family member is guilty, before they just say that what the police told them is true. There's a lot of other facts that they need to look at. And if they can look at those facts and then still think whatever they want to think and then still think that David Crowley is guilty, great. Okay, fine. Believe whatever you want. Whatever you want. Don't tell anybody else what they should think, but you can believe whatever you want. But if you have not looked at these facts that we continually talk about, and you're still going to believe that David Crowley is guilty, there's something wrong with you.
And my personal belief is that this was just given to us to say, hey, they were having issues. and here's the proof, and this is why David killed him, or killed them. Now you have proof, you can
move on.
Yeah, and this isn't proof. We don't even know if it was written by her. We are told it is by a family friend who didn't even use her real name. But, okay. I feel that it's a big distraction. That's my opinion, though.
Yep. Let's see if there's any comments here.
They were mainly asking who Natasha was.
Okay.
A friend of Sidra. That's who she... Natasha was in the group a while ago. Over a year ago.
Right. Yeah, she was a very, very close friend. She's like a family friend. You know, not just like a friend, but a very close family friend. And in my talkings with her, she was very open to the possibility that David Crowley wasn't guilty. That was my understanding of talking with her. That's why I took her seriously. So, you know, I mean, she's she's in two different spots. She's trying to speak for the Alam family, and at the same time she obviously has her own views on it. So you know, I always wanted to make that distinction of the fact that sometimes some of the things that she says is coming from the family, not necessarily coming from her. But for whatever reason, the family is not, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk with us. I don't know. You know, it's like the closer that you try to get to these families, the more strange the theories that they hear about us are. And they're just like, you know, it's like when you can actually get them to talk to you one-on-one, it's totally different than anything that they might think about who we are, that we just think that, you know, the government killed David and blah 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 or whatever. You know, it's totally different. And I think there are people that are trying to compartmentalize both of these families, both sides of David's and Kamel's family, to keep them away from looking for themselves, for looking at any possibility that maybe what they were told is not true. And I think there was a lot of pressure, and it was early on, much early, you know, early before we even got any of the documents. And I can tell that by my conversations from Sidra, when Sidra was talking about how, you know, the police found footprints of David, they found fingerprints of David, they found his prints on the gun. None of that was true. But, you know, I was talking with her about this all before the case had even closed. This is the stuff she was fed. She was fed so much stuff, so much propaganda, that I can't blame her for thinking that, you know, David Crowley is guilty. It was beat into her head by so many different people. But then when the evidence came out, everybody stayed silent. That's the big problem. So either they don't know, they don't want to know, somebody doesn't want them to know. One of those three.
I feel very bad for the Alams. I really do, because I mean, I can't even imagine what they have gone through. And
yeah, it was a perfect time. You know, everybody, both sides of the family had their own things going on. They're going through their own things, and it was just like, you know, on top of it all, David Crowley kills his wife and kills his daughter, and those families have to live with that for the rest of their life. I do not believe that those families do not understand the same things that we understand. There is something really wrong with this case. I think they know. I do believe that they understand that. I don't think they know what to do with it, and I don't think that they trust us that we're the right ones to handle it. But I think that they definitely know that there's something wrong here. And I really hope one day, you know, somebody from either David's side or from Kamel's side is going to help us finally get some closure to this case. They're not going to have closure. They know that. They can't sleep at night. They can't look themselves in the mirror right now. They know this. They know there's something wrong. And they are just waiting. They are praying. They are hoping that someday, some way, the truth will come out. So we just got to keep pressing on.
And I really feel bad for the silent family members, the ones who are trying to get their lives back on track.
Right. There's many of them out there.
Like I said before, I can't even imagine the pain that they're going through. Well, I'm going to type up or make the corrections and try to add this to the files so that other people can take a look at the analysis. And any new members can also do that. Future new members.
Sounds good to me. And then we'll come back here. Go ahead.
You might link the video with Natasha talking about the journal page.
Okay.
In the description of this video. That way people can go and listen to that, and it's right there for them.
Yeah, great. Yeah, they can listen to that, and you can, decide your own view. That whole thing was just meant to give her a platform to help us understand whatever her views were from her point. And that was the whole point, was to just let her side be heard. And personally, I found her very sincere. I would love to get her back on. It seems like every time that we get close to having a family or a family friend on, things happen. They back out. They don't want to get involved, whatever it is. But they are the key to helping us get justice. That's one road, not the only road. It's not like, we need them. But they could be a big value. They could be a very big help. I mean, we could be so much further along. A person like me wouldn't need to write a book. There should be no reason for me to spend this much time writing a book or doing anything on this case. This is a slam dunk case. Every person in the alternative sector knows this is a slam dunk case. Why they won't touch it has baffled me, has frustrated me, and has changed my view on the alternative sector, period. I'm more focused on real human beings. I'm more focused on the people in the chat room. You, the people who are looking at this, the people in our group, whether they like me or whether they don't, right? It doesn't matter. They're
genuinely want the truth.
Yeah, they want the truth. They want to know what really happened here, and I think that's what we all have in common. So we will come back tomorrow night, and we're going to continue our discussion on the notepad, and then we'll talk a little bit about the article of the suicides versus murder, and anything else anybody else wants to talk about. So make sure to join us here tomorrow night. Go ahead.
That will be a live conference call with the group. So please contact Greg if you want to join in, and he'll give you the link.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I definitely encourage the group members to please join in. We would love to have as many people as possible. Make it lively.
That's right.
Well, thank you all for joining us tonight, and hopefully the latecomers can rewatch this because there's a lot of great information throughout the whole video.
Yeah.
The slideshow includes samples, and you could go back through the crime scene photos to see samples of Camel's handwriting, and through the BCA notepad that Greg added to the group files, you can look at that too to see your own sample or her samples, but you can see it for yourself. And I believe that the journal page is also in the group files too.
Mm-hmm.
And so please make sure that you go there and check out all the files. I think I've added quite a bit over the past several weeks. It's just stuff that I received from the BCA and Apple Valley. I didn't want to add everything at once and overwhelm people. So, but I think I have like 2 or 3 more things to add, and that will be it. But it's important that the group has everything to look at.
Sure is. All right, so we will sign off here, and I'll finish up here. I'm going to play the extended version of Natasha's interview, and hope everybody has a great night. Thank you all for joining us here. We'll stay in the live chat, but I will be ending the free conference call right about now. So Sophia, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate that. And
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Until next time.
Okay. Till tomorrow night.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Goodbye.
We'll read it together, and we'll post it into the group so the group can all read it too.
Okay, so I had asked Sidra what she thought about the group. Should the group go away? Has it caused any grief? Any suggestions on what they could do better? I met up with her at lunch today, and this is what she said, and I was just typing it up as she talked. But this is what she said. She said, I won't say that the group hasn't caused me grief, because it has. I have obsessed over it for a good 6 months when it was first created, only because there was so much disinformation and people were talking about my family. But I've finally given up on trying to convince them to go away or tell them what I know. I am not against it, because I get that the people on the group have grown attached over this case throughout the years, and to some it's their personal experiences that have been similar, and they weren't able to do anything for themselves or that person, and that's what has brought them to the group. Brought them there to get some sort of closure for themselves. So this may be therapeutic to them. So who am I to tell those people to go away? But I'll tell you what I am against. There's 2 sides to this tragedy, facts and personal evidences. I don't think personal evidences have anything to do with the group, like talking about the families and even talking about David and Camel's journals. That's something for the family to know. Y'all need to focus on the crime scene and just focus on the facts from the day this occurred. Nothing more than that should be discussed, because it's not anyone's business. When the police investigated, they didn't care where my dad worked decades ago or if Dan Jr. was gay. They looked at facts from that day, and that's what y'all need to do. Just sitting there having conversations isn't going to get you anywhere. Schedule a meeting with investigators, sit down with them, and get y'all's list of questions about the facts and get those answers from them. If they are not willing to sit down with you, I can try to see if they would be willing to meet up with y'all or would be willing to answer some questions over a call. I'm sure that I can convince Gummert to do that. But yeah, I think that's all I have for y'all. Good luck, and I hope you guys can get the answers y'all are looking for. That was basically what she said today over lunch for you guys.
Do you think she can really make that happen? Because I've been trying to, because, Gummert...
She actually can make that happen because Gummert, this was a while back, he had told her if that was something she wanted to do. He brought it up if the police investigators needed to sit down with the group, because at that point Sidra was very distressed. Obviously, it was so fresh, and any little post would trigger her. And I mean, we had told her to stay away from it, but curiosity and all that. But yeah, that was one of the things that was brought up by them, that if that was something the family wanted, they would be willing to do that. So I'm sure, now time has passed, and that Sidra could ask Gummert if that's something they would be able to do. I don't see why not.
Okay, great. I would love that if we could just get that.
I mean, if they can't meet with you guys, I'm sure a Skype call or something, it's not going to hurt them.
Yeah, sure. Even if it's just, hey, you know what? We have this whole list of questions, and let's just, we're gonna ask you these questions. I mean, yeah, basically, anything like that will help people get closure on some of these questions, and then we can, get rid of some of the speculation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of this information can be eliminated from there too.
Okay. Well, that's great. I really appreciate that. Thank you for doing that. I'm sorry that the first question, I believe, is about those journals. So it kind of she's like, yeah, well, I mean, and that's the most...
Yeah, I mean, I see her point of view. The weird thing about me is I get to see both sides. I agree with you guys at certain aspects, and I agree with Sidra, As far as journals go, I think that should be released, but that's just me, The reason why I say that is their journals have a lot of information, David's were a little weird, he wasn't the easiest person to read, but, as far as Kamel's go, that's all she spoke about. So I think, maybe in time, Sidra would be willing to, release some of the journals, but it really shows you what Kamel was going through, and I don't think she even understood what she was going through. So, yeah, I mean, it started in July when Nyla got sick, and, she started writing just, I guess, her thoughts and stuff, and she talks about her dad and how frustrated she was with him, and just, back and forth with the family. She was just trying to understand her feelings, and I think she was just very confused because she wanted to be there for her family, but I don't know why she didn't say that on her journals, but David didn't want that. He didn't want her coming down here, and that was the plan. Even after she disagreed with Mr. Alam about, doing chemotherapy and stuff, she was supposed to come down here for Nyla's surgery. Mr. Alam was going to buy her a ticket, and, even though they didn't agree on things, they were still, she was still there for them. And then one of the journals that stuck out to me was overnight she sat down with David, and he convinced her that she shouldn't come here. That's not her family anymore. Ronnie and David are her priority, and let them figure it out. And it's just a pattern. It's very interesting, reading them and seeing how it shifts and how her even her own emotions change. She starts doubting herself. She starts off strong, and you can see a pattern. So yeah, I don't know exactly what else you wanted me to cover on her journals.
Well, I think there's a lot. I mean, anything that would help us understand what they read in those journals that made them think that David Crowley was guilty would definitely be good. Now, I mean, just to before we get there, I just want to, people should really recognize that's a big deal if Kamel's mom, is going through all of this pain, all of this suffering. Why wouldn't David want Kamel to go see her mom? That
was
kind of
about
bothers
control.
me.
It was more about control for him. I think ever since that time when Kamel called her dad and said she was leaving him, I think ever since then it was very, I guess he was scared for that. He didn't really like for Kamel to come down here. I mean, I don't know if you guys know this, but she's only came down to Texas twice. And it was the 2 times that she got the cars. And one of those was Cidra's graduation. But any other events, she never came down to Texas. Sidra was the one that would go in the summer and, spend Christmas with them because she just couldn't come down here. And I think that speaks, like, a lot, too, because it just shows, I mean, what daughter wouldn't want to visit their, her family and her friends in Texas? And I think that speaks a lot from his side on how controlling he was on that aspect. I mean, everybody, every man is different, and to a certain extent, there is some control there, and that's totally fine. Everybody has that in their relationship, but, to a point where, you can't do certain things. He's making her quit her job, and he even writes that in his journal on how he planned it, and he was surprised that he was able to convince her. So, I mean, it just shows manipulation, it just shows, like, how possessive he was over her. And the night of David's reunion, he writes about that, how one of his old buddies from school complimented Kamel and called her beautiful and whatever, and he didn't like that, and he just writes a whole article which was so crazy, and it shows his possessiveness. He says she's mine, and I married her because of her beauty, and it's bizarre. I don't have the journal with me right now, so I could read it, but he was very possessive. Even Ronnie, he writes about her, how he came in between their marriage, and as a parent, I would never think my daughter would come in between me and my husband, so I mean, it just shows how possessive he was over Kamel. So I think that's part of the reason why, she wasn't able to come down here. He was scared. He didn't want her, coming down here and maybe, changing her mind and wanting to stay here in Texas. I don't know what was going through his mind, but I think that had a lot to do with it.
So when you say his journal, because we've heard from different people, multiple sources, blah, 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 about different journals, when you say that he wrote this in his journal, can you clarify which journal you're talking about? Because I've heard about several journals. So
the only journals I've seen is a written journal that he had. He had 3 journals. He only wrote in one. One of them had 1 page on it that apparently he was going to, keep up with, but he never did. But the one I'm speaking of was a DK and a heart on it. That was the front page of it. So I'm guessing that was David and Kamel. And
so these are
it was a written journal. Yes, these are written journals.
Okay, yeah, because we've heard about a written journal, a video journal, and then I guess this journal that came out.
I don't think there's any truth on the video journals. That is something I asked Sidra about it, and she said that it was said that there was an online journal, but she hadn't seen anything from the online journal. It was just a written one that she knew of, and that's something we both have read.
Well, that online journal is in the police reports. So it's a journal called something he was writing in Day One, and I believe it ended in November of 2014, and I think it only started maybe that previous summer. So it wasn't a very long video journal, but I think, and then you can see in the documentary, they, some of that stuff they call video journal. So it's like, okay, well, what do they really mean? Because those are the videos that David made.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of it also has, like, misinformation also has a lot to do with the police not doing the best job possible. And I think, honestly, they just hadn't. They told Sidra this, too, when she went in March, that, they have never dealt with something like this. They really had to, figure out how to do it. Like, something she had mentioned was that they had to call the Bloomington police and, contact them. And, a lot of times when they were confused or didn't know what to do, they would contact the higher-ups and ask them for advice. So I think, I feel like they should have just hired a totally different company, or I don't know how it goes, honestly, but they should have had someone higher up who had an experience on this, doing this, and not them. So I see, as a third person, why you guys are frustrated, because of all the misinformation from the police reports. So yeah, I see like that aspect of it.
Do you know if the county sheriff was involved at any point in this? Because it kind of seems like it's just Apple Valley. Well, like, there's not too much mention of the county sheriff being involved in this. Maybe that would have been better than hiring.
Yeah, I don't think he was. I don't think he was. Sidra only spoke to Gummert. That was who was assigned to the alarm side. And I'm not sure who was. There was another person that was assigned to the Crowley side, but it wasn't Gummert. They had two separate investigators. At one point, Gummert was out of the office, so his boss was talking to Sidra, but that is about it. I don't know if there's anyone else.
Okay.
I'm sure there were a lot of people involved, but
yeah, seems like it. Yeah, there were a lot involved here. So okay, so we got that journal. And then with her journal, was there anything in there too that would help us understand why the family thinks David Crowley is guilty?
She talks about a lot of mental abuse and him wanting to try different types of what would you call it, like drugs, and you could tell that she was very the way she wrote her journals, it basically, she was talking to the journal as to, like, I feel like that's something she was venting, like she was living two different lives. She was agreeing with David just to keep the peace in the house, but the way she truly felt, she was writing down on her journals. And there were a lot of different instances where she also spoke about being scared of him. She wrote one time that she took Ronnie out to, she just left the house because she was so scared of David, because I think that was the time when he tried shrooms, and he was hallucinating, and what else did she say? She said, I wish I had the journals on me, but she basically just talks about how scared she is, and that's not something that Ronnie should be around, and apparently she didn't even know he was going to do, which she was really angry about. They hadn't, that caused a really big rift between their relationship, because that's not something that Kamal wanted Ronnie to see,
Was David doing this by himself, or was he with friends?
No, this was by himself, and she wrote that she locked him in the room. I don't know which room she locked him in and how she did that, but she said that she was scared for him and she didn't know how to handle it. And she also wrote that she thought about calling his dad, but and she also wrote that he has alienated everybody, and I don't even know who to reach out to anymore. And just certain things she says, it just shows how alone she felt. And it shows that she didn't agree to it. Most of the things that were going on, it's just beyond me that she was such a strong, independent girl, and she didn't think I just don't know why she just didn't leave, if she felt that way,
Yeah, I can relate to that, because I've dealt with a similar thing, and you do kind of wonder that, like, why don't they just leave? But obviously,
I've never been in that situation, so I wouldn't, I thought about it, but I've also heard I guess you just get so into it and you feel like you can change them, so
yeah.
I guess that's why they stay. But
do you know who? Go ahead.
Oh no, what was that?
I was just going to say, going back to the drugs, I was just trying to, do you know who he got those from? Is there any mention of, like, who, because obviously he doesn't just, and really, to be honest, I've never done shrooms or anything, but if I was going to do something like that, I wouldn't want to be by myself, and I definitely would not want to be around my wife. I'd want to be with close friends that I trusted.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was something, that was part of the reason why she was writing in her journal, because she was so that he would do that to her. He would put her in that position where she wasn't even aware of this, So that was part of the reason why she even wrote it in her journal. And he did mention in his journal about asking Danny Mason about shrooms, because apparently he had done them before. And Sidra had asked Danny Mason about it, and he said that David had asked him about his experience, and Danny told him, I don't think you should go that route. I didn't have a good experience with it. And honestly, he also said that, what else did she say? He said that once you get that high, you always want something, more, like something more that'll give you that high. So that's not the route he should go. And Danny told her that David said that he was just tired. He wanted something more. He wanted to feel something more. So, but Sidra asked him if he was the one who had given him the shrooms, and he said he had no idea about it. So I don't know if it was Chris Peck or who it was who gave him that.
Okay. But she didn't, do you know if if Kamel ever experienced with any of that? Or maybe that's not even relevant. Maybe that's...
She didn't talk about shrooms. She did talk about, smoking weed. She did say that, it helped her anxiety, and that is something she had told Sidra in the past, too, that she did. It helped her, her anxiety levels. But,
right, and she would know because she was in the medical field, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so she didn't do it that often, but, whenever her anxiety level was high, that is something that she would do. And she also suggested that for her mom's pain, like medical marijuana, for instead of the pills that she takes for her pain.
Sure. Yeah, they're giving my stepmom CBD oil, I think, for her bones or something like that, and it's definitely working.
It's very helpful. Yeah, it's actually helping with Mrs. Alam too. It helps her be a little more hungry, since she's on feeding tube or TPN. It helps her be a little more hungry and gain some weight and just not be as nauseous, and so yeah, I believe that helps.
Sure. Going back a little bit to what you said about when Kamel wanted to leave David, I'm trying to get a good timeline about when that first happened, when Kamel contacted her dad. And I know it's been mentioned, but just thinking here now, I'd like to have that so people can go back and say, okay, at this time.
Don't quote me on this.
Sure.
Don't quote me on this, but I think it was around 2012. It was summer 2012, I believe.
Okay.
Or no, actually, no.
I think it might have been later on.
No, it was actually before that. It was 2011, actually. Yeah, because when Kamel had came down for Sidra's graduation, high school graduation, that is something Sidra didn't even know about this. Mr. Alam did not tell Sidra about this conversation at all. He kept it to himself and didn't tell his wife or Sidra that Kamel had called him. He didn't. I guess that was their little secret. But Kamel had told Sidra about it, and in 2011 when she came down here, and when we were having lunch, it was brought up, and I was there too. It was a very weird lunch. That is where I saw the disconnect from Kamel.
Okay, so all three of you were kind of there?
Yeah, David was there too.
Who was there? Oh, David was there. Okay.
Yeah.
But there was something odd? You just felt something weird, or?
Kamel was a very perky person, she has a lot of energy to herself, and, I'm sure you guys can gauge that from the videos on how she is. The way she was talking and the way she would look at David for approval, that's something I've talked about before too, but that is something that struck out to me. I don't think Sidra had noticed that. I even brought it up to Sidra, and I said, Kamel's pretty different. She's talking a lot more like David, and she's like, well, they're married, you live with somebody, you start talking like them. And I was like, yeah, but any little thing we talk about, she always looks at David like, is it okay? I think I had mentioned that I had arranged a little get-together for the girls in her last visit in May. I asked if she could come spend the night, just us girls have movie night and stuff, and her first instinct was to look at David and see if it was okay with him, which I don't see why it wouldn't be, She was only down here for not even 3-4 days. So, yeah, it's just different things, anything she said or things that was talked about, that she would always look at him for his reaction. Is he okay? You could tell, that was her main thing. Even with sitting with Mr. Alam, Mr. Alam, I don't know if you know, he's very, he's a character. He's a very good person, and he's, he'll speak his mind. So, just having him around David, her anxiety level was so high because she was holding David's hand, and she would just always look at him every time Mr. Alam would talk, to make sure, is he okay? It just didn't make sense. It was just a really awkward place to be in for myself.
Sure. So, can I ask you, what note did I have here? When did you meet Kamel?
I met Kamel, I met Sidra first because we both went to middle school together. My dad, he is Italian, and my mom is Pakistani, so that's how we had something in similar. When she moved down here, she didn't speak English at all, and she had no friends, and I could relate to that. So we became friends really, really quick, and both of our moms, they got together, and it just, we just had a lot of things similar, and it grew pretty fast, and I met Kamel, I would say, when I was 13. Yeah, 13, 14. So it's been a while. Our families are really close. We both lean on each other, and the Lom side of the family has helped me a lot. We used to live in Dallas, and I actually moved down to Waco with them. That's where I met my husband too. And yeah, so like the Lom side of the family is a pretty big chunk of my family too. I don't have any family here in Waco. They're all I have. But yeah, Kamel was a pretty big part of my life till she was here in Texas. I saw her every day. So that's why I saw a disconnect when she came back from Minnesota, her last visit, because she wasn't herself.
And her last visit, just to clarify, was what year? Maybe a month?
It was 2014 in May.
Okay. May.
That is when she got her the car.
Okay. Was that when when David and Kamel went out to Southern California?
Yes. Okay. The reason why, and that's part of the reason why I think David's also controlling. They weren't going to come to Texas. The only reason they came down was because apparently his mom couldn't take care of Ronnie, so they needed someone to take care of her for a little while they were there. So they dropped Ronnie off, and since Nyla always talks about wanting Ronnie, because she left Ronnie for 2 months back in the day too, so I guess they could trust her. So yeah, they came down for a couple of days, left Ronnie, and then they went to California, and then they came and picked her up, and they got the car and went back to Minnesota.
So they drove. Did they drive from Texas to Minnesota?
Yes.
Back home. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
They left the black Corolla Toyota. They left that, and they left in the Acura.
Okay, yeah, that's always been the other thing, and I really thank you for clearing that up about the whole car thing. So if you could just kind of summarize about the whole cars, so everybody knows, the situation.
So before they went to Minnesota, Mr. Alam had I think it's when David graduated. Mr. Alam had bought David a car, which was the gray one.
Do you know what year that was?
I know the Corolla S was a 2005 because that was Cidra's car. They only had one car before, so I would say it would be 2004.
But I mean, what year they had?
Oh, what year they got the car?
Correct. Right.
No, I wouldn't know that.
Okay.
I know Cidra drove that her freshman year. Because the black Corolla was Cidra's car, but she gave it to Kamel because Kamel used to ride the train or the bus, and she felt bad for her because it was so cold in Minnesota, and Mr. Alam had quite a few cars, so she decided to give Kamel her own car. So that's how Kamel got the black Corolla.
Okay, so they had the black Corolla there, and then
And then
go ahead.
Kamel had an accident. She slid. There was like some ice or something. Her car messed up for a good bit, and so Mr. Alam then bought the Acura for her, and he figured, since she had Ronnie, she needed a bigger car, so that's when he bought that for her, which was towards the end in May. And he had actually bought it for quite a while. It's just they could never come down to pick it up.
That was in May of which year?
14.
Okay, 2014. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Let's see, other thing I had. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? Or I had a few other comments here, a few other things here that I was looking at, notes that I wrote down. One of them deals with the Quran, and are there multiple versions of the Quran, or because there was a lot of questions about the pages that were torn out, that were found in the crime scene photos, and if they had meaning, if they had purpose, or if they were just random because of the dog.
One thing that was brought up was the page that was opened. You know, it was a forgiveness prayer, but I mean, even Sidger said, you know, there was no way that could have been a true picture of the page, and that was something they brought up at the meeting in March when she went down to Minnesota.
In March of 2015.
Yes, when she went up there, when they had the whole meeting for the family. But yeah, it was open on the forgiveness prayer, but even Sidger said that, I mean, it was on the floor and the dog was there, you know. It could have been moved, who knows, you know.
Well, because there are multiple photos that show multiple pages torn out, so it isn't like there was just one page that was torn out, which is what we kind of thought first, that there was one page left on her body or something. The picture that they showed Sidra was the one with the book was still intact, I believe. So I think that was the picture. So it wasn't one of the it wasn't the other pages that were torn out that were shown to her. The only one that was shown to her was the one that was on the book that was opened. Okay, so they only showed her one out of many of. I mean, because in those photos you can tell it's multiple pages, multiple things that are torn out. Yeah,
I believe what she told me was that they had zoomed it in to to the Quran, and that's how she knew what it was.
Okay. Do you know, at that time, in March of 2015, did they tell her about what was written on the wall?
Yeah, that was actually the first time they had told both families about what had been on the wall, and that was something Sidra was, you know, upset or, you know, questioned why it was even hidden in the first place, you know. Just didn't make sense why they needed to hide it, you know. And they basically just said, you know, they wanted to show it in person. You know, they wanted to, they were waiting for the meeting. The meeting was supposed to happen when all this happened within a month, but because of Sidra's mom, you know, it was hard for her to just, you know, leave her dad with everything. They needed to get everything figured out before she could leave him.
Right.
So
and at that time, both of the families were they communicating with each other, or how did that work out in the first couple months?
Mr. Alam did not speak to any of the family. Sidra was the sole person dealing with everything. Miss Alam was really sick at the time, and they were in Dallas in another hospital. So Sidra basically told Mr. Alam, you know, don't worry about anything. I'll take care of it. You worry about Mom. Her husband will take care of the businesses, and she'll handle all of this. So that was what was decided in between all three of those.
Do you think that any of that was encouraged by the Gray State team?
So I believe when the whole documentary thing happened, I think, yes, I do believe, I think they took advantage of Sidra, you know, her being naive and, you know, wanting to see the good in everyone, which, I mean, even from certain things that had happened and while I was there, I kept telling her, you know, just don't trust everybody. And, you know, it stuck out to me, especially with Mason Hendricks. He really didn't want Mr. Alam on the documentary. He kept pushing for just Sidra. he even told her not to tell Mr. Alam about this documentary. He put her in a position where she was very, she didn't know what to do. But yeah, I definitely think, they kind of liked that they were just dealing with Sidra and not Mr. Alam. Because in all reality, if Mr. Alam had been dealing with all this would have been a whole nother thing. It wouldn't have transpired to all of this. It wouldn't have gotten to this, especially with the documentary.
Have you seen the documentary?
Yes, I have. I have
do you
seen
have
the
any
one with
views you want to
Sidra
share?
and which one? The previous cut or the one that's out there on Netflix?
The previous cut.
Well, what could I say about that? They picked and choose what they wanted to put in there, obviously. They did a lot of editing. They just took out some words that Sidra had said and Mr. Alam had said. But the things that should have been there weren't on there that they really wanted on there.
When you're comparing the two versions, is the narrative a lot different?
The one thing that stuck out to me on the second one, the official one, they kind of try to make Kamel look crazy, in all honesty, by showing her clip. And you know what the crazy part is? Mr. Alam had never seen that footage till the day it got released, so that was the shitty part in all
Really?
this. Yeah, we had never seen the footage, and that is why he was so upset that that's his daughter, out there looking crazy, and that's not something they even asked for permission. So, yeah, Eric Nelson definitely had an agenda on what he wanted to show. So, after the rough cut, that was sent to Mr. Alam, Mr. Alam basically said he wasn't going to sign any paperwork till he saw what the direction was going to be. And that's something Nelson had said, that, everybody's story was going to be told, and he didn't have an agenda. Just whatever the interviews were, he was just going to present them how they were. So I'm glad Mr. Alam was pretty smart, and, he wanted to see the rough cut before he signed it. I mean, they were pushing Sidra to sign her part. But Mr. Alam made sure and was firm that Sidra didn't do that. Once he got the cut, he was not happy with it. He told him, what's the moral of this movie? What are you trying to get at? What's the point of it if there's no lesson? Because that was what was told to the Alam side. There was going to be a lesson in this. There was going to be something for others so they can be enlightened, PTSD or, mental abuse, or for, with women, just something, there should have been something. In all honesty, there was nothing about that documentary. I don't see why the Crowley side agreed to it. It shows their son as a crazy lunatic. If the roles were reversed, I would have never wanted that out for my son, But that's just me.
Yeah. But if they could show that it wasn't just him and it was her too, then it goes back
and
to the pack theory.
That's kind of what I felt. There was no reason for them to put that footage in of Kamel,
Agreed.
I feel like the reason why they put that in is to put that pack theory in people's head that, maybe she was going crazy, maybe they decided it together. So I just didn't see the point of that. And, another weird footage was Ronnie in the basement, and that made no sense. And the other one, I'm glad you brought that up. The footage of Ronnie talking about the bloody man, they make that seem so bad, and it's actually really funny. You know, it's I don't know if you've seen in the certain movie productions, there's this little red man that shows up before a movie starts.
Can you name one? Because I've been looking for this for months. Maybe years now.
I will get back to you on that.
I can't find it.
I will get back. I will get back to you on that. Cool. Yeah, but it's this little red man that they always scared her with. You know, he was a little red man, and you know that footage was actually recorded by.
Could be a touchstone thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it could be. I think so. I'll look into it. I'll ask Sidra. She probably knows. And I'll let you know. But yeah, it wasn't anything. I mean, yeah, I know as the third person looking in, it sounds so creepy for a little kid to say that, but she was a very, you know, she had a very broad imagination. You know, she talked like that, and they just turned it around and made it sound so awful for her. Like, you know.
No, she was very bright. That's the way.
Yeah.
Like, she was bright. She could understand all the. Yes.
She was extremely bright, you know, when I met her, you know, she it didn't seem like I was talking to a 5-year-old, you know. She was very intelligent for her age, and I think that was part of her autism. I know that they're very bright, and, you know, so I think that has to do with that. But yeah, just going back to the documentary, you know, certain things they showed had no reason to be on there, and that were shown were completely out of context. So that was what Mr. Alam didn't like.
Yeah.
And you know, the sad part is, you know, the Alams this had already been decided, and you know, they were like, you know, they got their interviews towards the end. It was around July. Sidra was like 9 months pregnant when they shot all that. So apparently they weren't even going to be on the interviews, and not Danny Mason, I always get them confused. Mason Hendricks convinced Nelson to put them on there. So yeah, it was a pretty shitty part on their end, and I think Crowleys are to blame too, because, you know, they had no contact with the Alams. Sidra was always the one trying to contact them for anything, and, you know, I get, you know, they feel guilty or, you know, with what happened, but, you know, communication was very, very poor, and it was all through, like, Mason and, you know, Sean, and they shouldn't have been even in the middle of this, in my opinion. You know, it should have been the families talking, and that just wasn't it. Dan Senior never wanted to talk, you know, just it would be through email or a text message, and a day late or a week late conversation. So yeah, they're a hard family to communicate with, and that's something even his friends say, you know, that's just how they are, that they're a little weird, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, right, which is different than saying that, because they weren't talking to David, or because they didn't talk with him every day or whatever, you know.
Yeah, because that's something Mr. Alam brought up. He said, I understand, you know, from our side, we're far away, you know, we're dealing with Nyla's sickness. Well, what was y'all's excuse for not, you know, being in each other's lives, you know? Like, he's like, if that was me and my daughter isn't talking to me for this long, and she lives literally 10 minutes away from me, I'll pop up at her house, you know? So, I don't know. Their family was a little odd, but, I mean, I'm not going to say too much on that. I don't know them that well, so.
Yeah, sure. Can we go back to a little bit about when we're talking about Rainey in the basement? And can you give us the correct pronunciation of what the daughter's name? Yeah, can you say the name?
Her name is Rania.
Okay, thank you, Rania.
But,
okay, so can you give us a little, because you've watched that documentary, you've seen both versions of it. The version that they certain people have, kind of teased us with or tempted us with or whatever. But in that version, what is happening with Rania in the basement? Is there any...
Honestly, there was no point of them putting that on there. It was just a little tantrum. She was in timeout, and that was all there was to it. And it was funny how she was acting. And David loved, the thing with David, he documented everything. This may be TMI, but he even recorded her first poop, But that was just him, he loved recording things like in the moment. You'll see a lot of their pictures, they're not posed pictures, they're in the moment pictures. That's what he loved. So it was just something he documented, and they chose to use that, I guess.
Yeah, that seemed kind of strange. Out of all of the stuff that they had,
yeah,
that seemed kind of strange that they would use.
They were just really trying to, prove how David was, and make him look uglier, in my opinion.
Yeah, but they put that, like, it's not just that they showed it in there, it's where they showed it. They showed that in the cult section. So we're here talking about this cult, this and that, and, like, I don't know, like, a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, you just don't get a good feeling after you watch that.
No, because it's just more like fear. It's like, well, it raises so many different things, whereas a documentary is supposed to give you closure. It's supposed to help us understand what really happened here so that we can move on. This did not.
And
this
was
not a documentary. So,
absolutely not. I completely agree with you, and that was part of the reason why Mr. Lum and Nelson were going back and forth. He said he was going to add some stuff in the end. Apparently he added the dog at the end. Apparently that was supposed to be a lesson, which I don't see how. It's just crazy to me. Honestly, I don't know how David's family agreed to this. I wish they would have taken back their interviews too, and this wouldn't have happened. But
now, is it possible that they signed the same contract that I signed, and that then they saw it later and they were like, wait a minute, like, what the heck
because
is going on here?
When I went with Sidra to the hotel where they were gonna shoot their interviews, they wanted them to sign it there, and Mr. Lum was not okay with that. He's like, no, I will not sign any paperwork till I see what your agenda is. So yeah, that could very well have been what had happened. But I also do know Sidra had told me that Dan Sr. had talked to her a little bit about this, and he didn't want to go through with this. Apparently Nelson had reached out to him when all of this had happened, right away, and he shut him down. But I think the Gray State family had a lot to do with why they went through with this. That's just my personal opinion from what I saw.
I totally agree. Mm-hmm.
They pushed it. Honestly, Dan Sr., he's a very sweet man from what I have heard, him talk, the way he's talked to Sidra, he's a sweet man. Think he got manipulated into doing this. His friends basically, that's what he told Sidra was, they said this would be a tribute to his son, which I don't see how the heck this is a tribute. But, like you said, maybe he signed it off thinking that would have been a tribute, and afterwards it wasn't what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, it was kind of the same thing that they told me. Oh, we just want to get to the truth. We think you guys are great. You guys are onto it. We just want to get your guys' side. And I'm sure, and now what I'm learning is they told everybody else the same thing. We just want to get your view.
Yeah.
That's it.
Absolutely.
But make sure you sign this document. Like, the only reason they wanted me to sign that document was so that I could not sue anybody else, so that I cannot sue it.
Absolutely.
It was just like, wait a minute, like, so I even tweaked it, and they didn't really notice it, but it was just like I don't really care because I don't have anything, but it shows that they were not trying to make a documentary. They had ulterior motives, from what I'm saying.
Absolutely. They told everybody, different stories, and I really wish, we everybody got together before all of this.
But they were, but they were keeping us separate. They were trying to make both families think that people that were asking questions were the enemy.
Yeah.
And
it just shows their motives. When Mr. Alam at the end, he told him, there's no way he was gonna sign off on this documentary, and Nelson said he respected his wishes. He would take off both Sidra and Mr. Alam's piece on that, and that was the end of it. And he said he was going to let him know when this aired. He was going to have him fly out to New York and all this stuff, but they honestly it's pretty crazy, but they didn't even know when it was going to get released, the documentary. I actually told Sidra, because I would regularly check up on y'all's page, and that's where I saw it at. And I told her, I was like, hey, did you know that the documentary is getting released? And she had no idea. And then she told Mr. Alam, and Mr. Alam actually flew out to New York with his lawyer, and he was present at the release, but they had no idea. They were undercover.
Right, which they shouldn't have had to be if all of this was just going to lead us to the truth, right? There was no need for any of that.
Supposedly they went through tons of stuff and went through all of his videos, and I think that's something that Dan Senior had told Sidra about. That was part of the reason why he wanted to go through with it, because he wanted someone to come in and dig information, because that's something he has always had trouble with. He always told Sidra, he can't find the why, so I guess that's part of the reason why he went through with it. Maybe someone would be able to find the why.
Do you know who interviewed them?
So I don't know names exactly, but Nelson was there. I was there. I was sitting outside when they were getting interviewed. Nelson was there. Mason was there. Chris Peck was there. And there were two other guys that were holding the camera, and there was a skinny guy that was holding the microphone, I believe. Yeah, they wanted to interview both Sidra and Mr. Alam separately, but Mr. Alam didn't want that. He said that if they wanted an interview, it'd have to be together. So they both sat down together. So on the raw footage, they basically, if they wanted to show Sidra separately, they just zoomed it in all the way on her to make it seem like she was separate.
So how much footage is there of them? Of the Alams?
They try to get Kamel's side of the view on who she was as a person. Sidra talks about that. They talk about, when they got married. Mr. Alam was opposed that. They talk a lot about, most of it was for Sidra's side, when she went up there in October. So they touched up on that. Her interaction with David, and just basically he asked stories of Kamel, and if we knew anything about her paranormal activities, and if they had any occurrences. And Sidra had mentioned one that she had when she went up there in Minnesota when they were living in their apartment. So she brushed up on that part, so that was on the documentary as well. And they ended it showing that she was pregnant, and something good was going to come, which was so stupid, but Sorry, I just
No,
really
that's
hate
weird.
the documentary.
No, I do too. I've only seen it once, and it was the only time that I watched it live. So I do not want to see it. But wait, so
yeah, it's a bunch of vomit. Yeah, they actually didn't have the dog part. Then they ended it with showing Sidra's stomach, and
Are you
saying,
serious?
"Okay, yeah." Well,
You
you know what
gotta be kidding me.
they showed it because Sidra's due date was actually Rania's birthday. So they thought that was so intriguing, so they wanted to end it there by saying, "Oh, well, this baby's going to come on Rania's birthday," kind of thing,
Oh. Okay, so they're pulling at our heartstrings. Okay.
Yeah, they
Gotcha.
even said that they were going to do it that way because it was just crazy to me. Like, it was just so stupid. I'm glad they pulled it out because, gosh.
That seems weird. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. They wanted some kind of emotional thing to end with. That's why they chose the dog. So everybody, he even said it. When Mr. Alam said, take our stuff out, he said, okay, we'll all have to take some stuff out. We'll go ahead and put the dog on there, so we could have that, ending to it. And, everybody can feel happy, giddy, I guess.
Gotcha.
I don't know how you could feel that way, but.
I guess. All right. Anything else you want to end with here? I really appreciate your time, taking your time in.
I mean, just going back to what Sidra said, I actually truly believe in, what she said. I, in my personal opinion, obviously y'all are, I'm not, who am I to say what y'all should do, but I truly feel like, if you just get out of the stories, what happened and who this person was, where the fridge was, just little things. I think if you focus on more of the crime scene, I think that would get you a lot further, cause
well, I mean, okay, well, tell us where we learn that David Crowley is guilty, because that's what I'm having a hard time finding. I can't find anything to really show me, and I've looked at everything.
And that's why I think that's why Sidra actually said to, sit down with investigators. I think y'all should just focus on the facts,
Right.
It doesn't matter why it happened. The facts, how it happened, like who did it,
right.
The actual fact of him actually pulling the trigger, that's the information that y'all should have. And that should be the only thing that should be discussed, in my opinion. So I think that will help a lot. And if y'all want to proceed with that, I can tell Sidra, that is the route y'all want to go, and we can see if Gummert will be willing to sit down, or whoever, to answer those questions for y'all.
Sure.
And maybe we can lay it to rest. Who knows?
Let's do it. Sounds good.
It should have been done a long time ago, in all honesty.
That's right. Yeah, you're right.
But I guess better late than never.
Exactly. I just wrote down the exact same thing. Better late than never.
So Sidra contacted Dan Sr. A couple days ago, and she asked about Ronnie's ashes, because that is something she has been wanting to do for a long time, to lay them to rest. And life gets in the way, a lot of things happen. That has always been something that she wants to do. So in the past, when she brought it up, Dan Sr. wanted both David and Ronnie to be together with Kamel. In the perfect world, that would have been okay, but considering the circumstances, that's not something that the Lums were okay with. So they pulled back from that. They didn't talk about it for a good while. But Sidra contacted Dan Sr. a little while ago, a couple days ago, and asked, if she could get those ashes, and, if he could send them to her, or if she needed to fly out there. She would cover the cost, whatever that was needed to happen, so it could happen, That's something that's been pretty heavy on her conscience, and she just wants to proceed with that. So yeah, he said that was okay, and he didn't have her address, which was very odd. He definitely has her address. He has sent her a lot of stuff in the mail, documents and stuff in the past, so I guess it got misplaced. Who knows? But yeah, that's what he said. He didn't have her address or whatever, or he would have done it. But yeah, he got her address, and he said he was going to overnight it, so she should actually be getting them tomorrow, which is Friday, and that is a holy day for Muslims. So during sundown, I believe. I'm not sure on the time, but they haven't given me a time yet. But we're shooting for sundown, before sundown. We're going to lay Ronnie to rest right next to Kamel. I don't know how they're going to do that, because I know there's other graves there now. So I'm not very familiar with the Muslim, religion. I mean, my mom is Muslim, but I haven't been around that much since I'm Catholic. But yeah, I don't know how they're going to do it, but the ceremony is tomorrow, and me and my husband will be attending it tomorrow, and I'm really happy Ronnie gets to finally be put to rest with Kamel the way it should have been done. But yeah, that's all I wanted to share with you guys. So if y'all can pray for Ronnie tomorrow, that would be great. I'll let you guys know when she's put to rest finally, and maybe y'all can say a prayer for her.
Hello, everybody. Today is March 23rd, 2018, and we'll be discussing the Crowley case here on this live conference call with people both on the chat room and also on the telephone. Dan Hennon, this is Dan Hennon here. Greg Fernandez here is joining me as well, and then we'll go around and introduce the others on the call. Also, we're hoping for roughly about a 2-hour show tonight to get some things covered. One of such is, there's really 3 things I think to cover tonight. Number one is this new spreadsheet called Inconsistencies. It's a Google Doc made that people can populate the inconsistencies in this crime so far. We'll go through that list, and then we'll have the 2 updates or announcements here that has been relatively new here in the last couple of days. One being such is the Ranny's ashes are en route and being overnighted down to the Alam family in Texas so they can have a proper burial. We'll have an update on that. And then also Sidra's friend, or actually Sidra has said that there's a possibility that we could get an interview or a conference call meeting with lead detective Jim Gummert on this case to go over